I'm on the road to go pick up my girls. It's Sunday afternoon. Sunday, July, let's see here. Sunday, July 25th. I'm on the way to pick up my daughters in San Clemente, California. That is the sacred meeting place where mother and father meet and exchange their children. It's very interesting going through this process of separation and divorce and, all the adjustments and changes that come with it and all the dramatic adjustment and changes that come with it for children. And one little tiny slice of that experience that is it's literally like a piece of Americana experience relates to parents meeting each other in fast food parking lots to exchange their children, as if that's a normal thing or a good thing, or it has become a normalized thing. Because when I go to drop my kids off or pick them up, I was astounded to realize that almost every time there's another one or two or three other parents meeting in the parking lot of the Carl's Jr. in San Clemente. Turns out it must be a good spot. Or it turns out it's just all too common, and these are the things we often don't observe or pay attention to until we're in it. And I pull into that parking lot and I see the father waiting with his children, knowing what that father's feeling, knowing the pain of saying goodbye to your kids every single week when you wanted to be with them every day. Or you see the mother with her children and knowing the pain she's feeling having to say goodbye to her children, knowing she wanted to be with them every day. And looking at the children and realizing they didn't get to choose. They simply had to ride on the waves of their parents' inability to work through what amounts to things that we all need to grow through, things we all need to work through, whether we do it through marriage or as individuals or alone. Either you spiral up or you spiral down. Either you grow through your pain or you continue to recreate it in your life and the lives of others around you. As I was getting ready to leave today, I came across this picture of my daughter, Olivia, who is 7. And it was her in this little turkey costume. She was a little over 1 year old. And it's just a moment in time, and that image takes me back to that time and that place and the home we lived in and the memories we had and the experiences we had and all the hope and dreams wrapped up in it. And what struck me in the moment as I looked at the image was how much personality Olivia had as a baby and how much personality my other daughter Alice had as a baby. And if you're a parent who's paid attention to your children, you know that your baby's born into the world with their own unique persona, their own unique personality right there. Not only that, even if you're a dog person or a cat person or a horse person or an animal person, you realize that animals do tend to have even their own personality, their own unique temperament, but also their own unique personality. There's the child is born into the world as a sort of energy in a body. But we get caught up in the words we use to define the essence of what is life within a physical body or a physical form. But if you've ever seen a dead body, animal or human, and the life has gone out of that body, you know that it's implicitly different than a living body. It looks, smells, feels like a pile of lifeless meat. But when there's life in that body, it's animated. It moves in a way that tells a story. It moves its mouth in a way that tells a story. It moves its body and its face in a way that expresses a particular way of experiencing and expressing through the medium of the body. So babies are born an essence, a living essence in a physical body. And from the time they're babies, you can see how curious they are. You can see how alive they are. You can see how excited they are. And if they feel safe, and if their needs are met, you see how all you have to do is get out of their way and keep them from hurting themselves. And they are automatic learning and growing machines. Not machines. They're automatic learning and growing beings. They are, again, an energetic resonance, an essence, a soul in a physical body. And if their basic needs are met and they feel safe, if they are loved, they will naturally learn, they will naturally grow, they will naturally become. And the role of the healthy, loving parent is to provide an ever-expanding space from which the child can experience and be curious and grow. That child is born into the world curious and motivated to learn, and you can see that energy, that essence within the body wants to do more than the body is capable of. The body needs to learn how to move. The body needs to learn how to move the fingers and move the mouth. The body needs to learn the language, the symbolic interface between the body and the other bodies. The body has all sorts of things to learn, but that soul within, that resonance within, that essence within, is already there. It's already formed. It's already curious. It's already excited. It just doesn't have the tools or the mobility or the mediums of understanding that are relevant to the time and place that it was born into. It has to acquire those things. And we all start in that same place, relatively speaking. Obviously, what we know from genetics research and epigenetics research is that we are affected by previous generations. We are affected by previous trauma. The extent to which we are affected is unknown. It may place some limitation on the ability to expand emotionally, physically, intellectually. And at the same time, we know that adversity and limitation sometimes sparks the drive for greatness. And so limitations become a source of inspiration. But relatively speaking, we are all born into the world as an excited, curious being that is self-motivated to explore the world around us and to become a part of it, to navigate it, to learn it, to understand it. And this is where things begin to diverge for all of us. We are all born into a certain family. We are all born into a certain community. We're all born into a certain culture. We're all born into a certain language. We're all born into a certain history, and that history is told differently depending upon which side you were on, what role you played in that history. And so this pure essence within, this honest, curious, free, excited resonance within begins to interact with the physical body it is born into. And that physical body it is born into begins to interact with the world around it. And certain physical expressions begin to be punished and shaped or nurtured and encouraged from the very beginning, depending upon, most importantly or most impactfully, the mother and the father or the caregivers of the child. And then by extension, all of the norms and the cultural values and all of those things, that the histories that are acting themselves out through the guardians and through the parents, and then later by extension through the teachers and the schools and the community and the culture. So the physical body learns, and when I say physical body, I include the mind, because the mind is an extension of the physical body. I should say the thinking mind, the ego mind, the attached mind, the conscious mind is an extension of the physical body. Because if we get into transcendence or look through it through the concept of something like transcendental meditation, then we start to expand the concept of the mind and expand the concept of the body and expand the concept of knowing and awareness to something much more expansive. But the physical body, including the brain, begins to learn from the environment around it from the moment the baby is born. And moving forward, and certain sensations in the body that are expressed through certain sounds and certain behaviors are interacted with in certain ways. Some parents punish crying, other parents nurture crying. Some parents avoid, some parents approach. Some parents nurture, other parents punish. And the sensations and the emotions in the body begin to turn into behaviors and voices and sounds and words. But by the time the behaviors and the voices and the sounds and the words begin to emerge, that baby has already experienced a massive amount of learning by the way their parent or parents or family or culture has interacted with them. By the way they have learned what their body has learned about the world around them. Driven by curiosity and excitement, the body learns that certain places are not safe, certain words are not safe, certain sensations are not safe, certain expressions are not safe. And over time, depending upon the particular story that we are born into, that baby is born into, a person learns to develop a sense of self, a sense of physical, emotional, psychological, spiritual self in the context of the time and the place and the family and the culture that they are born and raised and that they become a part of. And by the time they become adults, the natural expressions of the body, the natural curiosity, the honest sensations have become so perverted, so shamed, so manipulated, so selectively expressed and honored that there is a profound separation and disconnect between the honest, natural, wise soul or essence within that we are born with. There's a major disconnect between the physical body, including the conscious mind, the ego mind, and the essence within, which we would call the soul or the full consciousness, the true self, the life force, whatever word you want to use, whatever tribe you come from. There is an energetic resonance within that gives animation and life and form to the physical body. And the life story that we live and the time and place we live it in dictates how that body interacts with the world in adult form. And the way that body selectively expresses and attends to the world based upon the learning of that body, based on the limited expression of the soul by the time we become adults, that person begins to create a certain type of reality. And we all tend to start co-creating a certain type of reality. And we are all creating and co-creating the very realm, the very reality, the very existence that we resist and we fight against and we run away from and we resent and we hate. And in this moment, I had no particular direction I was going with this. I was simply inspired by the picture of my daughter and the thought that led to, and then the perception and the awareness that it led to. But I think something that I've been thinking on for a long time, and something that I'm curious about and I pay attention to in how our culture works, in the collective stories we tell ourselves, in the things we fight with and wrestle with and we resist and we act out and we oppose, the points of contention within myself and the points of contention within culture. I've looked deeply into my places of conflict and contention and attachment and resistance within myself, and have steadily been working on resolving those points of conflict, either by progressively letting go and grieving and growing through, or taking full responsibility and taking charge where I can. And you can insert many different teachings and philosophical perspectives and schools of thought on how we go about the processes of change. how we go about our journey of change. In the statement I just made, there's a little bit of Stoicism, there's a little bit of Buddhism, there's a little bit of Christianity, there's a little bit of modern psychology, there's a little bit of Hinduism. There are all these stories, all these ideas, all these mediums of understanding that provide a pathway to growth, that teach us how to grow and how to become divine or godly or at one or at peace within and without. And something I'm very curious about when I look at my children, or when I work with children, or when I look at parents interacting with their children, is how we go about passing along generational ideas, generational trauma, how we go about passing along our collective knowledge and our collective biases and our collective fears and our collective dogma and rules and rituals, how we go about passing that stuff along without even considering whether it's a good idea to do so or not. And I think a lot about the concept of correct knowledge, which was something I was introduced to by a mentor of mine when I was 25, Dr. Ernest Halford, Willie Halford. He introduced things to me at 25 that really didn't make any sense to me until the last 4 or 5 years, or maybe they meant increasing sense over time. But he knew what he was doing in planting seeds. And, it's fascinating to me how we have all of these amazing tools and teachings at our disposal. We have thousands of years of human wisdom at our fingertips. And I do believe we're becoming more and more receptive to it. I see a collective process taking place of people becoming more open to good teaching, to healthy teaching, to correct knowledge, and people diving deep into the great teachers that have come before us and the great lessons that are within us through transcendental meditation or transcendental prayer or transcending the ego mind or the attached mind or the trauma mind, all the shit we've been passed along. People are opening up and waking up and finding a way back to a sort of symbiosis, balance within the self and within the natural world around us. And something I notice is that a lot of people will be confronted we will all be confronted in our daily lives with opportunities to grow, karmically speaking, whether you like that word or not, or you like that concept or not. We're always being put in a position, or our life is always finding us in a position where we are crashing up against our trauma, our poor teaching, our biases, our fears, our resistance. We're being given good information and good challenges, and we are being tested and taunted by our daily lives in a way that we could grow through and grow from. And the things that scare us and the things that give us pain and the things that give us suffering could be our greatest teachers. And suffering is not necessarily something we have to wallow in or feel powerless to. It is our teacher. And what I notice is that I notice this on a cultural level. I see it through the eyes of the clients I work with. I hear it through the mediums of connection that we have, the internet, social media, so on and so forth. People will be confronted by a sort of knowledge. They'll be confronted by the knowledge of name your book, name your treatise, name your philosophical story, name your teacher. People will be confronted by good knowledge, by a sort of correct knowledge, and they will either resist it or allow it, depending upon the way their spirit, the way their soul interacts with the physical body in the present moment, in the context usually of a multitude of biases and fears and ideological attachments like political party, religious group, city, location, neighborhood, culture. And when people are confronted with good knowledge, with well thought out truth, with knowledge that comes from people who have spent their lifetimes learning the knowledge of all the greats that came before them and refining that knowledge and making sense of that knowledge and coming to their own unique perspective of how to share that knowledge. And we will allow ourselves to interact with and allow that knowledge to affect the way we perceive and experience and practice in the world, dependent upon our own fears and our own biases and our own resistances and our own emotional, spiritual, ideological, psychological boundaries and barriers. What I notice is that when people are confronted by great knowledge or opportunities to grow in the present moment from our own life experience, too often we resist it, we refute it, we deny it, we avoid it, we push it away because narcissistically speaking, we deflect and we resist and we deny and we oppose whatever makes us feel threatened. And whatever we feel threatened by is not about true danger. It's not about what is actually dangerous. It's how our physical body, how the sensations in our body interact with the thoughts and perceptions and ideas and beliefs and doctrines that govern how our physical body, including our mind, interacts with the world, how we derive meaning, how we derive purpose, how we derive survival. And I think what got me going down this path today was a recognition that we were all born into the world the same way. We all came into the world the same way. And the essence of what we came into the world with, the creative, excited, curious being that was born into the world, is still there within all of us. And a lot of times what we call mental illness, a lot of times what we call suffering and pain is the fact that the honest, true self beneath it all is so suppressed and so silenced and so abused by our own mind, our own ego, our own fears, our own theories and ideas about existing and surviving. It's so abused by our own ego self, and it is also so abused and shaped and formed and resisted by the world that we live in, that that true self beneath it all is oftentimes just so not given the opportunity to become fully expressed. Rather than allow the individual within to become fully expressed, rather than nurturing that, rather than listening to the great teachers that have come before us, rather than questioning the learning of our parents and the teachings of our parents and the teachings of our teachers and the environment around us, rather than questioning whether we were given correct knowledge or highly biased knowledge, we allow ourselves to resist the good teaching and the healthy teaching. We allow ourselves to individually and collectively remain stagnant, remain in sort of a injured adolescent phase of development. And the one thing throughout my life that has allowed me to maintain an optimistic point of view, or that has allowed me to not become a cynic, is the fact that we are all capable of learning. No matter who you are, no matter what limitations you perceive in yourself or that the world tries to make you believe, you are capable of learning. And true learning requires us to notice how the ideas and the beliefs and the rules and rituals interact with the sensations in our body. And to notice what triggers us, to notice what makes us afraid, to notice what finds us lashing out in anger, to notice what finds us hiding in fear, to notice what makes us feel powerless and depressed, to notice what makes us feel anxious, and to be willing to grow through our suffering and to be taught by our suffering, rather than to try to force the world to fall into alignment with our simple comfort zone, our emotional, psychological, spiritual, ideological comfort zone. It's so fascinating to me that we create all the shit that we complain about. We collectively create everything that we complain about. We collectively create suffering. And we accept that suffering is a thing, as if suffering is a construct that exists in a stagnant or resistant form that is unchangeable. And the last thought I have, it's kind of a funny one to me, that was sparked by what I was just saying, is generationally, people like to make fun of millennials. And what people are really saying is these people are too soft or they're too sensitive. They want things to be really safe. Rather than saying, we created this type of a generation because we did not want our children to be the victims of the suffering and the trauma that we experienced. And likewise, our parents wanted us to be more free from their suffering. And it's amazing to me how much we resent the younger generation. how much we resent younger people in general as we age as a generation, rather than being so grateful that they're more sensitive, being so grateful that we created a world, or that we were part of a world that was conscious enough that it at least tried to make things better for the children. It at least tried to make children that are more emotionally aware, that are more conscientious. It's amazing to me that we resent the younger generations because we want them to suffer as much as we suffered. Rather than being so grateful that we have nurtured generations of people that are more in touch with their emotions, that are more in touch with the emotions of others. Rather than punishing it, perhaps we could guide it. Perhaps we could learn from it. Perhaps we can learn how to grow through our trauma instead of imposing it constantly on the world around us. And I'm saying this in the moment as I'm 5 miles away from picking up my children at the Carl's Jr. in San Clemente, California. I'm in full awareness that my children's lives have been affected by the way that I lived, in the way that I learned, in the way that I became a part of the world around me. And I grieve the loss every day of time that I would have otherwise gotten to spend with them had I somehow been able to. Not that I would have been able to. And I'm not living in attachment to this grief. I'm simply aware that rather than avoiding the pain, rather than avoiding the grief, rather than avoiding the awareness of the pain of the experience, I'm trying to learn from it and grow through it. And some things I've learned is that my job is to be present for my children and available to them, whether they're with me or not. My job is to want what's best for them, whether they're with me or not. My job is to be consistent, to provide them shade. Like I believe in my podcast in episode 36, I was talking about just being a deeply rooted tree and providing shade. And it's not like a tree uproots itself to follow whatever attachment around. So rather than thinking that I need to always be physically there with my children, it's recognizing that I want them to know that I will be there whenever they need me, as long as I'm breathing. And that I'm going to continue to work on my roots, and I'm going to continue to nurture myself so that I can be more open and more present and more honest and more capable for them and for others and for myself. And part of why I'm sharing right now in this way with you is because I think that we learn by being honest with each other. I think that we learn a great deal by being honest with each other and working through our problems in an open and honest way and moving toward greater degrees of love and responsibility and freedom, and perhaps by living in more of a correct way according to the great teachings that are available to us, or to the great knowledge that is already within us that we were born with, that you have to unearth through the journey of becoming in life. That's all I got for you today. That's all I wanted to share in this moment. I'm going to be quiet now for a little while before I go get the girls and just work on being prepared and present for them. Take care, everyone. Much love to you. This is Mark Jesinoski. Take care.